I will leave you with this one note. This way of thinking is still around. It still exists right now. We are still experiencing it different ways. Right now, we have the Epstein class that they are getting away with basically murder and, you know, you guys already know. I don't got to get into the details, but they're getting away with some really graphic stuff. People are upset. They're not going to get in trouble. It just seems like they're not going to get in trouble. It doesn't matter what we do to try to hold them accountable, they just don't get in trouble. Us regular folks will go to jail for these little small things. These guys can't go to jail for doing some of the worst things. So I'll leave you with that, and that's where I'm done.
Call me a colonizer, I'm gonna make you fucking cry. And I'm not gonna feel bad about it, okay? It's not my fault that my ancestors were better at fighting than yours. Okay, it's not my fault your ancestors were so bad at fighting they got fucking colonized. Maybe your ancestors should have fucking fought better. Maybe your ancestors should have been better at fighting. But no, they fucking sucked at fighting, and that's why we won.
Hey, aloha, colonizer. No, but for real, I couldn't tell if this lady's profile was just satire or for real. I think she's for real, but let's roll with it. But yeah, I hear this a lot, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, Europeans were literally living in squalor, which allowed them to build up immunities because they had such poor hygiene and food handling skills. And so by the time you guys went around the world to colonize the world, you spread ample amounts of sickness and disease, which wiped out millions of people. So I don't know if I would say better at fighting as much as I would say better at surviving sickness and disease. I mean, there's lots of times in history that kind of show y'all getting your asses kicked. Like the time we whooped Cook's ass in Hawaii, or the time Magellan got his ass kicked by the Filipino, or the multiple times America got its ass kicked by the Lakota Sioux, or the Seminoles whooping y'all's ass multiple times down in the South. See, the reality is Europeans didn't win in a lot of places they colonized because of being good at fighting. It's because they fought unfairly. They cheated, they lied, they manipulated. So the reality is a lot of Native American tribes whooped a lot of ass on settler colonizers. And when they whooped that ass, state governments and U.S. governments would turn around and ask for peace treaties. And those treaties were viewed very differently between indigenous peoples and Americans. And so once those natives created these treaties, a lot of times they had full, ample trust in the United States and the people, only to be deceived and have those lands stolen and their people killed later on. Because the fact of the matter is, America's broken almost every single treaty it ever made with an indigenous group of people. But the reality is, I don't know if decimating food sources, killing off livestock, burning farmers' fields, poisoning water sources is truly a thing to be proud about and justifying saying that it's strong fighting. Nor would I say that giving entire villages poisoned blankets would be considered strong fighters. But that's the kind of shit you really want to be proud of, then fuck, feel free. All I know is you got a twisted version of American and world history if you really think your ancestors came here and fought fairly. Anywho, colonizer, I think you need to read full history, not just the versions that you want to believe in. Aloha.
Well, first of all, it's easy to take that side. I get it. Everybody wants to take the side of the winners, right? And yeah, I give you that. They won. But how you win, I think, is always very important. This young lady obviously doesn't know the history, and it's easy not to know the history if you only know that they won. It's like, why would I look into the history? I might find something I don't want to hear, or I don't want to know. At the same time, I believe that they really don't care. I think some people just don't care. And a lot of the colonizers just didn't care about anybody else but themselves. And that's kind of what it is. If you read the history, it shows very, very dirty ways of them winning. The whole thing with the blankets, with the Indians that were infested with smallpox, or just doing coups. And I mean, that's more modern. If we stick with the whole colonization back in the day, it's a lot of examples. The whole thing that he said about them being dirty fighters, or just dirty. Very true. In the Caribbean, they killed most of the people because they were so dirty that they literally infected most of the Indian population. So most of the Indian population in the Caribbean died because they were just overwhelmed with all these diseases, basically. And on top of that, a lot of these diseases that we have now were brought by your ancestors. So if you want to be proud of all that, hey, be very proud of that. But a lot of some of these diseases that came up is because of people having, relations with animals. They talk about that now, but it's really, that's where it came from. A lot of diseases that we have, the sexually transmitted diseases, some of them came from having sex with animals, which I don't know which animals they were having sex with, or at the very least having very, very unhygienic, sex, because they were just unhygienic in general. Again, but those things happened, and then they brought it to wherever they were. I'll stick with the Caribbean. And they brought it over there, and of course they assaulted the woman. The woman, of course, they got the diseases. That was another way. I mean, if you want to be proud of it, is fine. But when you bring stuff like this up, you got to be ready for some repercussion. Which, again, I honestly don't think they care. They just think about winning. Don't matter how lawless or morally bankrupt you are, as long as you win, that's kind of the goal. And I guess a lot of the indigenous people had a little bit more honor, and they were just not thinking that way. And of course, when you're not thinking that way, and you're trying to, or you trust your enemy that you technically don't think they're your enemy, but they're, you feel like they're doing something that's not right, and then you come into an agreement, and then the other party breaks the agreement in a way to win, because basically at that point there was no way of them winning. Again, you want to be proud of that? By all means. You can just say you won, and that's fine. But when you start getting into things that you have no idea what you're talking about, that's why people might get a little upset. And people don't cry. You can, what you're saying, people are not going to cry. They might be a little upset that you're that ignorant, but they're not going to be. People don't cry. Okay, maybe you'll cry, but I don't think you're gonna cry, because I honestly, I think there's certain people that don't have that moral compass of like, for your fellow man, have some respect. That's all. Shout out to the Hawaiian brother. He was spitting facts. Peace later. I will leave you with this one note. This way of thinking is still around. It still exists right now. We are still experiencing it different ways. Right now, we have the Epstein class that they are getting away with basically murder, and, you guys already know. I don't got to get into the details, but they're getting away with some really graphic stuff. People are upset. They're not going to get in trouble. It just seems like they're not going to get in trouble. It doesn't matter what we do to try to hold them accountable. They just don't get in trouble. Us regular folks will go to jail for these little small things. These guys can't go to jail for doing some of the worst things. So I'll leave you with that, and that's where I'm done. Peace.